With only a week left until the stump days, it's time to check the basements. The U.S. Embassy warned of possible extremist attacks in Moscow in the next 48 hours and advised U.S. citizens to avoid large gatherings of people, including concerts. A statement from the U.S. Embassy indicated an assessment of the likelihood of the event, imminent. The message was published on March 7, 2024 Thursday, when the U.S. ambassador was called to the carpet and warned about the inadmissibility of U.S. interference in the fascist election process. They threatened seriously, even to the point of expulsion from the cave, in which indignant madness was bubbling furiously. Enemies surround, grinding military equipment. Sweden officially became NATO's 32nd member country this week, and there's plenty to get excited about. Enemy exercises are again taking place on the northern borders, causing the stripes to tremble. The head of the General Staff Academy, Colonel General Zarudnitsky, in his article announced the inevitable spread of the war to the entire European continent. Judging by the level of degradation of the elites, whose faces the world saw in the recent message of the bald friar, discussions about the broom-grass heirs of Bonaparte, and the eternal enemies the Germans, have finally turned the skulls of the Russian bosses. True, experts note that the well-being of the Russian military-industrial complex is just an appearance. And the reserves of Soviet equipment that are being restored to be sent to war are not endless, and there is nowhere to replenish them. The war machine plows at the peak of its capabilities, which cannot be said about the propaganda machine. An angry Peskov publicly talks about the exhausted patience in the most democratic cannibal in the world, and the entire cattle depot nods in response. The fur farm is being charged for final roasting, feeling the historical exhaustion of the boys' show-offs. The fingers have reached such a point that the collective West has stopped shaking and is already openly saying, "Get started, you bald swamp, don't delay." The president of the Czech Republic, Pavel, has already announced that money for 800,000 shells for Ukraine has been found, and the weapons will soon arrive on the battlefield. Even Macron began to prepare public opinion for sending French units if the Russians break through to Odessa or Kyiv, and only Scholz is breathing unevenly, not daring to send the tourists to Ukraine, although the same Annalena Baerbock is all for it. As was said at Macron's meeting with party leaders, there are no borders or red lines, and Paris is considering the possibility of allowing special forces and military units to cross the Ukrainian border in order to pose a strategic dilemma for Russia. And there is a suspicion that Putin scratches this dilemma every day between stories about his work as a lumberjack and how Russia allowed the creation of Belgium. The likelihood of a nuclear war increases the clinical madness of the leader and his numb entourage, although the population has also gone crazy. U.S. President Biden compared his State of the Union address to Congress on Thursday to Roosevelt's when Hitler was on the march and war raged in Europe. Quote, "Putin is marching in, invading Ukraine and wreaking havoc across Europe and beyond. If anyone in this room thinks that Putin will stop at Ukraine, then I assure you, he will not. But Ukraine can stop Putin if we support Ukraine and give it the weapons it needs to defend itself. History is watching. If the United States leaves now, it will put Ukraine at risk. Europe is in danger. The free world is in danger, and those who would do us harm are emboldened. My message to President Putin is simple. We won't leave. We won't give in. I won't bend." End of quote. Biden also criticized candidate Trump, who is ready to give carte blanche to the insane Putin and cede both Ukraine and influence on the European continent to him, just to avoid a clash. Independent sociologists record the readiness of 80% of Russians to vote for Putin, zigging as if they were about to die. The widow of the deceased Navalny addresses her sectarians, urging them to come on March 17 and look at each other at noon. And at the same time, legalize this rat circus. The logic of events, accompanied by statements by officials, leads to the final line, beyond which either a ghostly world glimmers with an internal Russian system reboot, or a continental war blazes with an outhouse civilization that imagines itself as a hellish locomotive capable of carrying the whole world to the underworld.